The year is 1816, and the world has forgotten what warmth feels like. Across Europe, the summer that should have come never truly arrives. In the valleys of Switzerland, in the lowlands of France, in the damp farmlands of England, snow falls in June, crops die beneath sheets of ice, birds fall silent, the air tastes of metal and smoke. Historians will later call it the year without a summer, the coldest, strangest year anyone could remember. However, no one alive at the time knows why. They only know that the sun has dimmed, the sky burns the colour of pewter, and every day feels like late November. The cause, though unseen, lies half a world away. The colossal eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia the year before. It sent tens of millions of tons of ash into the upper atmosphere, veiling the earth in a thin grey shroud that turns sunlight weak and sour. That cloud has now drifted westward, across continents and oceans until it hangs above Europe like a bruised halo. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive, and I'd love to hear from you too. Where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now, together we slip into the journey. The temperature drops. Frost forms on the inside of windows in the middle of June. In the city of Geneva, people report snow on the lake shore. In Ireland, wheat never ripens. In Germany, farmers dig into their seed grain reserves, their last chance for the next harvest, just to feed their families. And in England, the price of oats doubles, then triples, then vanishes altogether as merchants refuse to sell what little remains. People begin to whisper. Is it judgment? A curse? The end of the world? No one knows yet, but the nights stretch longer. The cold deepens. Children go to sleep hungry and wake to frozen milk on the table. Horses collapse in muddy roads. The smell of rotting hay and damp straw clings to everything. This is where you live now, in a world that feels tilted, dimmed, and somehow forgotten by the sun. You wake before dawn. Your breath fogs in front of you. The first thing you notice is the silence. No morning birdsong, no distant bells, no creaking wagons rolling down the road. Only a muffled quiet, like the world has been wrapped in thick wool. The fire in your hearth has gone out during the night, leaving a crust of grey ash that still smells faintly of smoke. You rub your hands together, but your fingers are stiff. They feel almost foreign, like someone else's. Outside, the sky is pale and swollen, the kind of light that never quite becomes day. You open the door, and the air that greets you is wet and raw. The ground glitters faintly. At first you think it's dew, but it isn't. It's frost. Frost in June. The garden lies brittle under a thin crust of ice. Every leaf droops, blackened and split by cold. The beans are gone, the potatoes too. The soil itself feels dead beneath your boots. A thin horse shifts in the paddock, ribs showing through its dull coat, steam curling from its nostrils. You hear someone calling across the fields. A neighbour, perhaps, though the voice sounds far away. There's panic in it. It snowed in Bern, they shout. Snow in June. By midday, the frost has not melted. Instead, a grey drizzle begins to fall, soft but endless. The drops sting as they hit your skin, colder than rain should be. The smell is strange, not clean like normal rain, but heavy, with a faint tang of ash. Later, you'll learn that this rain carries dust from the far side of the world. But for now, you only know that it feels wrong, like the air itself is tired. In the village square, a crowd gathers near the church steps. Men stand in clusters, hands in pockets, faces pale. The baker has closed his doors. The blacksmith's forge is cold. A woman sells soup from a pot that smells mostly of cabbage water, and people line up with small tin cups. Coins don't matter much anymore. Everything is barter now. A loaf for a blanket, a candle for a handful of oats. Someone mutters that the sun has been stolen by God. Another says it's smoke from the Americas. You hear all of it and none of it. You're thinking only of the next meal, of whether the cow will give milk tomorrow. of how to stretch one loaf through 3 days. The bell above the church tower tolls noon, but it could be midnight. The light hasn't changed. That evening, as you walk home, you pass fields that look like graves, dark furrows filled with water and frozen shoots. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then goes silent. A carriage creaks by, its wheels sinking into mud, the driver wrapped in a blanket of oilcloth. You catch the scent of burning peat, someone trying to keep their hearth alive. It's a smell that will come to define this year. Smoke, damp straw, and the faint sweetness of mould. When you reach your cottage, you light a single candle. The flame burns weak and yellow. You sit by the window, watching it flicker, and for a moment you imagine the world outside your walls, the same grey rain falling across all of Europe, on Paris rooftops, on Irish fields, on the stones of Vienna and the lakes of Geneva. Millions of people just like you, all looking up at the same colourless sky, wondering if it will ever end. You press your palms together and blow gently into them, but the warmth doesn't last. There's a small sound, maybe a mouse, maybe the wind from behind the wall. You listen, waiting. Then the sound fades. The candle trembles once, then steadies. The air smells faintly of wet clay and iron. You think about how the summer should have smelled, of cut grass, new bread and dust on the road. But that's gone now. All that remains is the sound of rain on the roof and the slow tick of water dripping from the eaves. You close your eyes and picture sunlight, real sunlight, sharp and golden, the kind that makes you squint. But even the memory feels thin, washed out. You wrap a blanket around your shoulders and whisper to no one. Maybe tomorrow will be warmer, but you don't believe it. Not really. Somewhere beyond the hills, thunder rolls, not from a storm but from the sky itself, echoing faintly like a giant's breath. And so, the summer begins. The next morning, the church bell rings again, too early, too urgent. You wake to the sound of voices outside, heavy boots in the mud, and a smell of wood smoke drifting through the cracked window frame. Your body aches from the cold. When you sit up, the blanket sticks to your clothes. Damp has crept into the very weave of the fabric. You step outside. The mist is thick, swallowing the horizon. Somewhere in the distance, a horse neighs sharply, the sound cutting through the fog like a blade. People are gathering at the edge of the road. Farmers, women in shawls, a few children wrapped in their fathers' coats. Everyone faces the same direction toward the town. You follow. The road feels longer than usual, swallowed by the grey. Frost still coats the ditches. Every few steps you pass the ruins of crops, rotted cabbage, blackened grain, a handful of potatoes turned to pulp. Crows pick at the soil, but even they look weary, wings dragging low. When the first rooftops appear, the air changes. You smell tallow smoke, sweat, unwashed wool, and something else, a sour, desperate smell like old bread and fear. The market square is crowded. Stalls that once sold fruit and cheese now stand nearly empty. The butcher's awning flaps in the wind. No meat hangs from its hooks. You see baskets of dry peas, a few onions, a crate of spoiled apples, and in the centre of it all, a woman holding up a small hard loaf of bread, the last of her day's supply. 2 shillings, she cries. Take it or leave it. No one moves. The crowd stares, hollow-eyed. Someone mutters that the same loaf cost a penny last year. Another says he hasn't seen flour in weeks. Then a man steps forward, thin, trembling, a patch sewn on the knee of his trousers, and offers a handful of coins. The woman shakes her head. He pleads. Voice cracking. She turns away. The air tightens. A child starts to cry. Then a sharp sound. The clatter of coins on cobblestones. The man has thrown them at her feet. For a heartbeat, no one speaks. Then the crowd surges. Hands reach out, grabbing, pulling. Someone screams. The loaf disappears. The basket topples. A soldier pushes through, musket in hand, shouting for calm, but the people no longer care about calm. Hunger is a kind of madness. You stand frozen, heart hammering. The soldier shoves a man aside. The man falls, rises, and swings back. The musket fires into the air, the sound echoing like thunder through the square. Birds scatter from the rooftops. The smell of smoke and sweat thickens. When it ends, the ground is littered with crumbs, trampled into mud. The soldier's face is pale. He mutters something about orders from the magistrate, new rationing laws, higher grain tariffs, shipments delayed by flooding. But no one listens. They've all begun to leave, each person clutching whatever they could grab, a handful of peas, a strip of cloth, a broken egg. You find yourself staring at the ground. A crust of bread lies half buried in slush. You pick it up, wipe it clean, and tuck it into your coat pocket without thinking. By afternoon, the fog thickens again. You wander the narrow lanes, past shuttered windows and empty taverns. In one doorway, an old man sits with a bucket of grey water, trying to wash saltfish that's long since gone bad. The smell is sharp, bitter. He looks up at you and shrugs. "Everything rots faster now," he says. "Even hope." He laughs once, dry, without sound, then goes back to his work. Farther down the road, a church notice flaps on a wall. Famine Relief Committee. Distribution every second Sunday. But you know what that means. Thin soup, counted ladlefuls, and sermons about patience. The rain starts again. It's always raining. You pull your coat tighter, but the damp seeps through anyway. The world has shrunk to sound and smell. Dripping gutters, wet wool, the faint iron scent of your own hands. You pause under an archway where a group of children huddle. Their faces are grey with soot, their eyes too large for their thin faces. One girl holds a tin cup, half filled with what might have been milk hours ago. She's shivering. You reach into your pocket and break off a piece of the crust you took earlier. You give it to her without a word. She stares for a moment, then nods. "Thank you." Her voice is barely there. You walk on. The world behind you fades into mist. That night in the tavern at the edge of town, the talk turns darker. Men sit close to the fire, nursing mugs of weak ale. You overhear whispers, a rumour that the English government is buying up grain to export overseas, another that the rich eat fine in Vienna while we starve. A farmer slams his fist on the table. "The sky's one tip change," he says. "No one can fix the sky." Someone mutters that maybe it isn't the sky. Maybe it's God's punishment or the end of days. Others argue it's the work of volcanoes or comets or black powder from the war that never cleared. You listen in silence. You don't believe any of it, but you can't disprove it either. The candlelight flickers against the walls, painting shadows that look almost alive. The smell of smoke and spilled beer fills the air. A man nearby begins to cough, a deep, wet cough that doesn't stop. The room falls quiet for a moment, every head turning. Then someone starts to hum an old song, soft and low, as if to drown out the sound. Outside, the rain continues. Heavier now, the windows tremble with the wind. Later, as you walk home, you pass the bakery again. Its shutters are drawn tight, but through a crack you can see the faint orange glow of the oven. You can almost smell the bread, faint, unreal, like a memory. You stop, hand pressed to the wood. It sits warm. Inside, you hear someone moving. The baker, maybe, baking in secret for the soldiers or the magistrate's men. The thought stings, but you don't blame him. Everyone is trying to survive in their own way. You turn away, the warmth fading from your fingers. When you finally reach home, the house is dark. You light a stub of candle and sit by the window. The world outside is a blur of rain and fog. You think of the markets, of the fight, the empty stalls, the girl with the tin cup. You wonder how long this can last. The church bell rings again, slow and distant, marking another day lost to grey. You breathe out, watching the small cloud form in the cold air. Your stomach growls quietly, a sound that feels almost impolite in the silence. You close your eyes and imagine bread. Soft, warm, full of life. For a moment you can almost taste it. But when you open your eyes again, the candle has burned low, and the world beyond your window is still black. The only light is the reflection of your own face in the glass. Pale, hollow-eyed, waiting for a summer that will never come. The rain changes on the third morning. It sounds like rain, it looks like rain, but when you set the barrel beneath the eave and dip a cup, the water tastes faintly of smoke and pennies. You swish it on your tongue as if doubt could be rinsed away, then spit onto the packed earth. A grey ring blooms where it hits. The smell that rises is the smell of a snuffed wick. You try again, and again it's there. Ash in the rainwater, a whisper of a far-off fire that somehow found your roof. By sunrise, the lane is a procession of buckets and bowls, everyone catching what the sky will give. It's only dust from the chimneys. A man insists, though his voice lacks conviction, or peat blown from the bogs. A woman lifts her shawl tighter and says, "Chimneys do not cough over half the world." She tells you of a letter sent from a cousin near the coast who swore the dawn was purple, purple like a bruise, and the sunsets have been too red to be safe. You've noticed it too, that bruised light. People say painters in London are making studies of it, that a certain turner stares at the horizon for hours. Perhaps, or perhaps that's just something people say when they cannot explain a thing. Records suggest the skies did turn stranger that year. Whether the colours were ash or luck or God, no one agrees. By mid-morning the church bell calls one long note, then another. The priest, coat beaded with water, stands beneath the portico and holds up a jar. Inside, a smear of pale mud gathered from the rain barrel's bottom. He turns it under the thin light and the grit along the glass flashes, a dull glitter. There are whispers of a mountain in the Indies, he says, careful with the word, as if it might bite. A great eruption last year. If so, its ash rides the winds above us. This is why the sun is dim. This is why the cold will not leave. Some heads nod, some scoff. A miller mutters that priests have little learning about winds, and the two men trade looks that promise another conversation later, one without witnesses. You take your bucket back home. On the way, the lane passes the manor's outer wall. The gate is half open, and inside you catch a glimpse of colour. A woman in a faded blue dress reading by a window. Behind her, a fire burns in a tall grate. Even at this distance you can hear the soft sizzle of wet wood and the faint clink of a spoon against porcelain. The smell of clean linen leaks through the damp air like a story you once heard and never quite believed. Your bare hands holding the bucket wire sting where the skin has cracked. You lower your gaze and keep walking. At noon the rain thins into a fine, sour mist. You set the bucket on the hearth and pour slowly through a cloth, old shirt, patched too many times to patch again. The filtered rain looks better, almost like water should, though when you lift it to your nose the metallic tang remains. You warm it anyway. A handful of wilted nettles bruised with the knife, a pinch of salt the colour of damp chalk, and you call it soup. Would you drink it? You breathe the steam. You do. The afternoon brings a wind that creeps under every door. You wedge a strip of cloth in the crack, then another, then stuff one corner with moss. Tiny draughts still find you. The room smells of damp wool and cold iron. Your blanket smells like a wet dog that never existed, the ghost of one. In the corner, a little pile of straw hatched from the mattress last night when you sat too hard. You push it back inside the ticking and tie the slit with twine. Small victories. A knock. It is Marta, from 2 cottages down, cheeks raw, hair trapped in a scarf that must once have been red. In her arms she carries a jar, and a question in her eyes. "Do you have drippings?" she asks. "Even a spoon?" "You don't, not really, only a little tallow scraped from the inside of a pot." You scrape, until you have a coin of grease, and float it on the nettle broth you've saved in a wooden bowl. She stares at the film spreading, shining like a tiny moon. "For my boy," she says. "He cannot stop coughing." You nod and hand it over. Solidarity tastes like less for you and more for someone else. There is a warmth in the giving that lingers longer than the soup ever would. Toward evening, a shout rises from the bridge, the small one over the stream that used to run clear but now slouches brown with silt. You hurry with the others and find a cart belly deep in water, its left wheel swallowed by mud. An ox breathes steam, eyes rolling. In the bed of the cart, sacks that once were tight are now slack, grain inside turned to paste. The carter curses softly, not at anyone, at the year itself. You wade in, cold bites your legs through the stockings, and shoulder the wheel with 3 other bodies. Together you heave. The wheel answers with a wet pop, rising from the suction like something born. The ox staggers forward, saved. The sacks slump, ruined. The carter looks at his hands, at you, at the river that is not a river anymore, and says, "It will all be mulled by morning." You clap his shoulder, a useless gesture that somehow helps both of you stand a little straighter. As dusk tries and fails to bloom, you walk the ridge road with the postman, who has little to deliver and much to tell. In the pocket of his coat, a folded sheet from somewhere near Geneva, a journal entry copied by hand and carried by kindness instead of coin. The words are smudged, the ink bled by damp. Still the sentence survives. Snow yesterday. Lake dim. We write by candle because day is a rumour. He smiles without mirth. Poets, he says, always finding a good way to say a bad thing. Another letter mentions cattle dying from eating hay that fermented wrong, in the constant wet bellies blown and hard as drums. A third notes that wolves have been seen bold at village margins. Facts ride the same roads as rumours now. You tuck them into your mind like stones into a pocket for weight. Night finds you at the threshold, listening to the world. Somewhere a roof gives way under the day's wet, an abrupt wooden sigh, then a patter like applause. Somewhere else, laughter thin, stubborn, human. Someone has found a joke in the grey. You step back inside and light your candle. The wick sputters. The tallow has gone grainy with age and damp. The flame steadies, then trembles, then wears a small crown of smoke. You cup your hand and it grows almost brave. You write 3 lines in the margin of a calendar from last year. Rain tasted of soot, nettles again. Helped lift a wheel, the lead of the pencil skates. Scratchy, your fingers cramp. You squeeze and the cramp passes like a tiny storm. You think of how, in gentler times, you might have ended a day with a book by the window, or a short walk under broadleaf shade. A small modern comfort flits and vanishes. How easy it is in some imagined future to turn a tap and trust what comes. The thought feels like a rumour from another century. Before sleep, you set a bowl in the hearth to catch drips from the stones where last night's rain found a hairline path. Plink, plink. The cadence is almost soothing, like a clock that refuses to admit it is tired. You tuck your feet under the blanket and lay your hands on your ribs to count 10 slow breaths. On the 9th, a distant sound wafts through the window seam. The bell. One soft toll, then another. The village keeps time not with light anymore, but with metal and memory. You think of the ash in the rain, of the jar the priest held up, of the grit that shone when he turned it in his palm. Mainstream fact or not, you feel certain of one thing. A mountain you will never see took a breath so vast it reached your roof. Letters hint that the cold may last another season or 2, that next year will still be wrong. Or it might break in a rush and leave people staring at fields that dare to be green again. No book has the answer yet. Even the clever ones pretend. You slide your thumb along the candle's side and collect a crescent of soft tallow. You rub it into the cracks on your fingers until they gleam. The room holds the smell, animal, faintly sweet, mixed with damp straw, and the cool iron of the latch. The day returns in fragments. The girl's shawl at the barrel, Marta's jar, the ox's eye, the cartwheel rising from the mud. They pass across your mind like swallows in a fog, shapes more than details, yet you feel their weight as you sink. The candle finds a last seam of fuel and flares, a small, bright breath. Then it narrows to a pin, bends and goes. Darkness settles not like a fall, but like a shawl. You listen. Plink, plink. The roof still for now remembers to hold. You draw the blanket over your head and discover a little world of your own breath, warmer than outside, warmer than thought. The taste of the day, iron and smoke, fades to cloth and quiet. Somewhere between the 7th and the 8th breath, you think it tomorrow the barrels will fill again, and you will filter and warm and sip, because people can learn to drink a sky if they must, and because in this dim year, learning how to live with ash is another way of learning to live at all. You wake to a sound you no longer mistake for wind. It's the moan of an empty stomach, first yours, then the world's. The village has grown quieter, but not gentler. Somewhere a door slams. Somewhere else the hollow clatter of a pot turned upside down, its bottom licked clean. When you open the cupboard, you find what's left. A handful of dark flour clinging to the corners, 2 potatoes soft as bruises, a curl of dried onion skin. You hold 1 potato in your palm. It collapses slightly, its weight a whisper instead of a promise. Outside, frost rims the thatch. A low grey dawn hangs over the roofs, and from it drifts the smell of smoke that isn't quite smoke, more like burned grain, sour and dull. You follow it down the lane until you reach the square. The baker's sign creaks, faded to illegibility. He no longer bakes. Instead, a new trade has taken root, the barter of hunger. At the centre of the square stands a wagon with its sides collapsed, the wood blistered and stained. On it, sacks of spoiled potatoes slump like old flesh. A woman, broad-shouldered, eyes hollowed by cold, calls to the crowd. "Rot sits only on the skin," she says. "Cut deep. You shall find good meat inside." Her words sound brave, but you can see her shaking hands. Behind her the sacks steam faintly, the warmth of decay rising into the air. Flies cling to the edges of the cloth, sluggish from the chill. You approach, trading what you have, a scrap of cloth, a half-burned candle, a promise of firewood once the thaw comes. She nods, takes the offering, and fills your basket. The smell hits first, sweet and wrong, like cider turned to sickness. You gag, then steady yourself. Everyone does. You walk away with the basket pressed against your coat. People stare, not from envy, but from calculation, already measuring what they might offer for a share. Near the tavern, 2 men argue over a loaf gone black with mould. One insists it can be saved. Cut off the edges, scrape the rest, bake it again. The other laughs, not kindly. "You'll eat rot before rot eats you," he says. Records later will show that bread riots swept across Europe that summer. Even soldiers were given rations half their size. But here now it's smaller, just hands and voices, and a loaf too hard to break. You pass them, clutching your basket tighter. In front of the church, a young man kneels, head bowed, a small sign around his neck. Work for bread. His fingers are raw, nails blackened from soil. You've seen him before, helping the blacksmith. Now even the forge is silent. He looks up as you pass. His eyes, pale and glassy, seem to ask a question he's too tired to voice. You keep walking, then stop. You break a potato from the basket and place it beside him. He nods once. No words, just the faintest lift of breath. By noon, the fog begins to clear. The world revealed looks worse than you remembered. The hills are bare, the fields slick and black, as though the soil itself has rotted. You take the path toward the manor, not for charity, the gentry give less than sermons, but for trade. Rumour says the steward has been buying anything that burns. At the gate, a boy in a too large coat stands guard. His boots are wrapped in linen. When you tell him what you've brought, A half sack of damp straw, some twigs, a little bark. He hesitates, then waves you through. The courtyard smells of wet dogs and burnt wine. The stable doors stand open. Inside only one horse remains, its ribs a map of famine. You find the steward near the servants' quarters, weighing small piles of goods on a scale. Wood, cloth, candles, scraps of fat. Everything worth warmth. He looks up when you approach. Trade? You nod, setting the bundle before him. He sniffs. Damp. It will burn, you say. He tilts his head, as if considering. Coin. You shake yours. Food. A pause. He reaches into a crate and produces a handful of shriveled grain, grey with mildew. It sets all the same this year, he says. Good grain, bad grain. Still feeds the rats first. You take it anyway. As you leave, a smell trails you. The heavy perfume of something roasting in the manor kitchen. For a moment you almost forget the cold. Then you see a servant toss a bone into the mud. Meat still clinging, and the illusion breaks. The road home is slick, the mud thick as glue. A carriage passes, wheels flinging clots of dirt onto your coat. Inside, behind frosted glass, you glimpse a woman's silhouette, her hand resting on a muff of fur. For a second her eyes meet yours, though she might not see you at all. The carriage moves on, vanishing into fog. Behind you, footsteps. Marta again, face pale, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. What do you have, you ask? Turnip peel, she says, with a half smile that isn't set to smile. I sip will boil it twice. You walk together in silence. The only sounds are your breaths and the dull rhythm of your shoes in the muck. At the bend in the road, she stops. They say people are dying in Switzerland, she murmurs. Snow in July. The cows gone mad with hunger. They eat bark from trees. You look up at the sky. It's low and grey, the colour of lead. You can't imagine snow right now. It feels too cruel, even for this year. But she isn't lying. Records from that time speak of cattle gnawing fences, of people mixing sawdust with flour. Even the rivers turned strange. Flooding, freezing, flooding again. You touch Marta's arm. Will last, you say. You don't know why you say it, but it sounds like a spell. She nods and walks on, her figure dissolving into mist. When you reach home, the fire refuses to catch. You kneel before it, blowing, coaxing, pleading. The wood hisses, spits, smokes. You add straw, then bark, then even a torn page from an old ledger. The flame struggles, then steadies. You place a pot above it. Add the grain, the spoiled potato, a splash of ash-stained rainwater. The smell that rises is earthy, almost sweet. Hunger turns anything into hope. You sit beside the hearth, bowl in hand, and take small, careful bites. The taste is sharp and bitter, but it's something. You eat slowly, as if time itself might stretch with each spoonful. Through the window you see the last of the light fading. A single candle burns in the cottage across the field. Marta's perhaps beyond that. Darkness. Later you lie awake listening to the wind against the shutters. It sounds almost like whispering. 100 voices carried on the cold. You think of all the other people lying awake tonight. The farmer with his empty barn, the mother with her coughing child, the noblewoman behind the glass, the priest with his jar of ash. So many different lives, and yet the same hunger, the same grey air pressing down. You close your eyes and imagine food, not feasts, just enough. A loaf still warm from the oven, butter soft enough to spread, a mug of milk without the taste of metal. You can almost smell it. You can almost remember being full. Sometime near midnight, the wind drops. A faint glow seeps through the clouds, moonlight, or maybe the ghost of the sun that once lived there. The frost glitters on the sill. You breathe out and watch the fog of your breath drift away like smoke. The world feels fragile now, like something thin stretched too far. You wonder how many more weeks it can hold before it tears completely. But then you hear it. the slow, steady creak of a cart somewhere on the road. Someone else out there, moving, trading, surviving. A sound that means life continues, even in ruin. You pull the blanket up to your chin and whisper to the dark, "Tomorrow I shall find more to trade." Because that's all survival is now a quiet negotiation between hunger and hope. And for tonight, hope wins. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive. And I'd love to hear from you too. Where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? By the 5th month of cold, you stop trusting flame. What used to be certain, spark, kindling, warmth, has become another kind of chance. You strike flint and steel, and listen to the hollow cough of the spark dying before it finds breath. Even dry twigs hiss, as if protesting. The smoke that comes has no courage. It drifts sideways, grey on grey, until it disappears into air that will not take it. Morning is a bruise-coloured haze. The frost has turned the lane to glass, each footprint from yesterday frozen like an artifact. When you open the door, a small storm of powder swirls in, clinging to your sleeves. You shake it off and watch it melt, leaving dark circles on the floorboards. Water stains everything now. You could trace the map of the year in rings of damp. The neighbour's boy appears with a bundle of reeds under his arm. They say straw burns better if you soak it first, he announces. The kind of certainty only youth can manage. He shows you how he twists each stalk into a rope, then knots it. You nod, though you know the truth. Nothing burns the way it should. Still, you pay him with a crust of bread so small it looks like a joke between ghosts. He grins anyway, as if bread were a promise that the world still remembers sweetness. Inside, you kneel before the hearth. The cold stones bite at your knees through your trousers. You arrange the reeds, the bits of bark, the splinters of last year's chair. The tinder catches, flares, hesitates, and sighs itself out. A line of smoke curls up and lays itself along the ceiling beam like a cat too tired to move. You wave your hand through it and feel nothing but chill. When flame fails, you learn to bargain with it. Lamp oil dripped on rags, wax scraped from old candle ends, even the grease saved from boiled bones. These become your prayers. Each attempt smells different, rancid, sharp, faintly hopeful. Each ends the same way. A cough of light, a retreat to dark. The year 1816 will be remembered for many things. Frost, famine, strange skies. But to you it will always be the year when fire forgot its duty. By midday the clouds open just enough to show a smear of pale sun. It doesn't warm. It only reveals how cold everything else is. You carry a pail to the well, hammering at the ice crust with a stone until it breaks like thin glass. The water beneath looks dead, but when you dip your hand in it stings with life. You fill the pail and notice how the surface shakes, not from wind but from your trembling. Back inside, you pour a little water over the ashes in the hearth to clean it. The scent that rises is sour and old, mixed with the faint memory of heat. You sit for a while, staring at the grey sludge, and feel an odd kind of gratitude. It still remembers warmth even if you do not. Toward evenings, the sky deepens into a colour that has no name, not blue, not black, something in between that makes you think of slate wet from rain. From the ridge above the village, smoke crawls from a single chimney. Someone's managed a fire. You decide to see who. The climb is slow. The mud has hardened into ruts that cut your soles. Halfway up you meet a shepherd's widow, bundled in shawls. She carries a lantern the colour of old honey, its wick fluttering in protest at each gust. "It's goat fat," she explains, voice barely rising over the wind. "Burns dirty, but burns." You walk together to her cottage, a squat shape wedged against the hillside. Inside, the air smells of animals and sour milk. But there's a small miracle. The lantern still glows. Its light paints her face with amber. "You see," she says, "fire needs company. Alone it dies." She gestures for you to warm your hands near the lantern glass. You obey, though the heat is faint, almost imaginary. Still, it feels like grace. You thank her and leave before she can protest that you stay. Outside again, the wind finds your neck. Down in the valley, the village looks like a handful of dim stars fallen into fog. You descend, holding one thought. Maybe she's right. Maybe fire needs company. When you reach home, you light the lantern before trying the hearth again, as if the two flames might speak to each other. This time the kindling catches. The flame quivers, grows, flattens, steadies. You hold your breath. It stays. You sit beside it until your eyes ache from watching. The shadows on the wall move like slow water. The air tastes of resin and smoke. You can finally smell something alive. Char sap, the memory of trees. You take what's left of the potato peel soup and set it near the coals. It steams, the scent faintly sweet, and for the first time in weeks you eat without the metallic aftertaste of cold. Outside, the night builds itself quietly. The wind has softened. The sound of ice falling from the eaves punctuates the silence. You step out to fetch more wood and find the lane shining under a glaze of moonlight. Every puddle is a mirror. Your own face looks back, thin, pale, eyes rimmed with smoke. But still there, the world, however cracked, still reflects. A figure passes in the distance, martyr again, wrapped in rags, carrying something under her arm. She waves a hand. You walk to meet her. Found this, she says, holding out a bundle. Inside, a small log, half rotted but dry at the core. By the mill. Thought you'd burn it better than I could. You take it and feel the weight, heavier than gratitude, lighter than guilt. We'll burn it together, you say, surprising yourself. You break it in two with a sharp crack and hand her half. For a moment the two of you just stand there, exchanging breath clouds like smoke signals. Then she laughs softly. A fair trade, she says, and walks away. You bring your half inside and lay it on the fire. It smoulders, catches, burns clean. The room brightens by a shade that feels warmer than any light deserves to be. You listen to the wood's language, pops, sighs, the faint whine of sap boiling free. It's the first honest conversation you've heard all week. Later you write in the calendar margin again, fire held, martyr laughed. The pencil smears. You leave it that way. Smudges prove you still touch the world. At midnight, a knock at the door. You open it to find the blacksmith's apprentice. Soot-streaked and thin. Need help, he says. Forge won't start. You follow him through streets that gleam with frost. Inside the forge, the great hearth yawns empty. The iron tools sweat with dew. You strike the flint. Sparks fall and vanish. The boy curses softly. You remember the widow's words, fire needs company. You gesture for him to hold his breath close, to cup his hands as you do the same. Together you blow. The ember glows, fades, glows again. A thin tongue of flame appears, no higher than a finger. You feed it splinters, then chips, then a shard of coal. Slowly, reluctantly, the fire begins to remember itself. The forge warms, red creeping along the brick like dawn. The boy grins, teeth bright against soot. It's alive again, he says. You nod. Keep it that way, you answer, though you both know keeping anything alive this year is a full-time job. When you leave, the sky is pale and trembling. The first hint of another reluctant morning. The bell tolls once, then twice, sounding softer than before, as if even iron is tired. You walk home through the grey, the smell of new smoke following you, a scent halfway between sorrow and salvation. Back inside, the fire still burns. The room feels smaller, safer. You lie beside it on the floor, too weary for bed. The flames dance behind your eyelids as you drift. Somewhere in that half-sleep you hear voices, not words, just breath. People across the valley, coaxing their own tiny fires to life. For the first time, the sound doesn't feel lonely. You dream of warmth that lasts longer than the match, of hands extended toward you, not for trade but for comfort. When you wake, the fire is ash, but the room still holds its ghost of heat. You stir the ashes, Find a single ember, red as a heartbeat. You smile. The frost at the window glows faintly in morning light. Every crystal a miniature sun. The world, against all odds, is still capable of brightness. You whisper a promise to no one in particular. I settle keep it burning. And the ember answers, a soft hiss like a sigh, before rising into the air as smoke too thin to see. You learn to tell illness by sound long before you see it. There is the dry bark that echoes through thin walls at night, the sharp gasp that comes after climbing 2 stairs, the low rattle that sounds like wind trapped behind ribs. Everyone is coughing now. It has become the rhythm of the village, the only thing that breaks the silence between bells. The air tastes thick, heavy with smoke that never escapes. Chimneys clog with wet soot. Windows are nailed shut against the wind, trapping everything inside, the damp, the breath, the quiet despair. You wake one morning with a raw throat and pray it's only from smoke, not sickness. There are whispers of fever lungs, of families buried together, of blankets burned afterward to keep the infection from moving on. You pull on your coat and step outside. The cold slaps you like a wet hand. Across the lane, Marta is beating a rug with a stick, her breath fogging the air in bursts. The sound is oddly violent. She stops when she sees you. "Doctor came," she says. "He's gone house to house. Says it's the air. Says the damp breeds death." Her voice cracks on the last word and she looks away. You can't think of a reply, so you nod and say, "I'll boil water." The doctor is a thin man with a lantern jaw and eyes the colour of pewter. He came from the next town weeks ago and never left. Each morning he walks with a satchel that smells of vinegar and herbs. He doesn't charge anymore. There's no coin worth taking. You find him in the square, listening to a woman's chest. He looks up when you approach. "Keep the fire going," he says. "Before you can speak, keep your windows open when it's dry. Air must move." He glances at the sky and adds, "if it ever dries again." The church bell rings for Mass, but fewer come each Sunday. Inside, the pews look larger, emptier. The priest coughs between verses. His hands shake as he lifts the chalice, wine trembling inside like a captured flame. You watch the steam rise from the crowd's damp coats, curling toward the rafters. It smells of mildew and unwashed wool. You kneel, not from faith but from fatigue. Outside again, the mist clings low to the ground, swallowing your ankles. Children dart between puddles, chasing a hoop made from bent wire. Their laughter breaks into coughs, high and thin, like whistles with no breath behind them. You want to tell them to go inside, but you don't. Everyone needs their fragments of normal. Afternoons are the worst. The fog thickens, turning the world into a blur of pale grey. Smoke from every hearth seeps into the lanes until even the air inside your house smells burnt. You stuff rags under the door, but it makes no difference. The cough returns, deeper now, more patient. It waits until you are almost asleep before it takes your chest in its hands. You try remedies the doctor recommends. Honey, if you can find it. Hot water with salt. A rag soaked in vinegar held to the mouth. Nothing helps. The sound still comes, dragging itself out of you like a secret. At night you count your own breaths, listening for the pauses that might mean the next won't come. One evening, a knock. Marta again, hair plastered to her forehead, eyes wild. "He's not breathing right," she says, gripping your sleeve. You follow her without question. Inside her cottage, the air is so thick with smoke it feels solid. The little boy lies on the bed, face flushed, lips cracked. The doctor is already there, spooning a dark syrup between his teeth. The boy coughs once, twice, then sighs. A small sound, but it fills the room. The doctor wipes his brow and says quietly, "Better for now." You stand beside the hearth, watching the flame struggle. The wood hisses and spits. The smoke has nowhere to go. He needs clean air, the doctor mutters. But the air itself is wrong. He looks at you and you see how tired he is. Everything is wrong this year. When you step outside, the rain has begun again. It always begins just when you think it won't. Marta stands beside you, arms folded. "Do you think it will ever stop?" she asks. Her voice is small, childlike. You want to lie, but you can't. "It must," you say instead, and she nods as if that's enough. Days pass. You measure time by the sound of coughing from the next cottage. Some mornings it's loud, proof that they're still alive. Other mornings, silence. You don't ask which is worse. The markets are nearly gone now. The traders have moved on or starved. The square stands empty, except for the church notice board. New posters appear every week. Relief meeting, fever precautions, burial costs reduced. Someone has drawn a cross in charcoal beneath them. You run your fingers over the marks and the black dust smears your skin. At dusk you walk to the edge of the fields. The soil looks bruised, dark as spilled ink. The last of the potatoes lie half exposed, their skins split from the frost. You dig one out, more habit than hope. It collapses in your hand, black inside. You drop it and wipe your palm on your coat. A group of men pass on the road, carrying bundles of sticks. You call out, asking what they're doing. One answers, making fires by the river. The fog settles low there. Doctor says the smoke will clear it. He laughs once. Dryly, "We'll see if it clears us instead." You watch them go, shadows moving through smoke. That night, the wind changes. For the first time in weeks, it blows from the east, sharp and dry. The smell of rot fades a little. You open your window and breathe deeply. The air stings, but it feels clean. You cough hard, long, until tears prick your eyes, and when it's done, you can almost taste something like freshness. You fall asleep sitting by the open window, listening to the faint sound of distant bells. A few days later, the doctor returns. He moves slower now, his cough matching everyone else's. He tells you he's seen the sickness in every home but one, the blacksmith's. He keeps his forge lit day and night, the doctor says. Heater drives it off. He eyes your hearth, the small nervous flame flickering there. Keep it steady. Don't let it die. You promise, though you know how little wood remains. That night you burn a chair leg, then half a broom handle. The fire roars brighter than you expect, and for a while you forget the cough. The light dances across the walls, painting them in orange and gold. You watch it as though it might remember you. Later, when the fire shrinks, you sit close, knees nearly in the ashes. The air is thick, but warm. You think of the doctor, of Marta and a boy, of the children in the lane. You wonder how many of them will see another summer. You wonder if you will. Toward morning, a noise wakes you, a knock too soft to be urgent. You open the door and find a small bundle on the step. Inside, a loaf of coarse bread wrapped in cloth. You recognize the weave. It's Marta's. No note, just a smear of ash on the cloth, as if she marked it with her hand. You hold the loaf, still warm, and feel something in your chest unclench. You eat half, save half. The taste is rough and sour but real. It feels like medicine. When you lie down again, the cough waits a long time before returning. Through the thin wall you hear someone singing. A lullaby, maybe. The melody trembles, but it's still music. You close your eyes and let it fill the cracks between your breaths. The song is older than sickness, older than hunger. It belongs to a world that still remembers softness. For a few minutes before sleep, you believe that world might return. Outside, the fog lifts for the briefest time. The stars appear, faint, trembling dots, but enough to remind you they've been there all along. The frost glitters on rooftops, a mockery of snow, and the air carries the scent of smoke mixed with something gentler, bread perhaps, or hope. You pull the blanket to your chin and whisper to the ceiling, as if it can hear you. Tomorrow, the fires will burn stronger. Tomorrow we shall breathe easier. Your words vanish into the air, but for once the silence doesn't feel empty. The postman comes again on a morning that looks like twilight. His coat glistens with frost. Each step crunches like breaking glass. He knocks once, twice before you open the door. Messages from the south, he says, pulling a bundle from beneath his arm. His fingers are so stiff he can barely untie the string. You take the papers, still damp, and in that moment a minor miracle happens. The smell of another world. The letters carry the faint scent of wax and lake water, of ink made from walnut shells, and the promise of hope. You pour him a cup of warm water, the closest thing to hospitality left. He nods his thanks and leans against the frame. They say the weather's the same everywhere, he murmurs. Italy has snow in July. In Geneva the lake froze in June. Even the vineyards in France dead. He laughs, but it's not humour, just disbelief stretched thin. The world forgot its seasons. After he leaves, you sit at the table and unfold the top letter. The handwriting is neat but hurried, the lines slanting upward as if chasing daylight. The seal bears a small emblem, 2 mountain peaks and a tiny cross. The letter begins. To whoever finds this, the sky here is the colour of lead, the mountains are veiled, the air tastes of dust, and we write by candle because day refuses to arrive. You read the words twice. Beneath them, in smaller script, it is July, and we see our breath indoors. You picture Geneva, its lake rimmed with ice, its streets full of people staring at the sky as if it might apologize. You imagine the sound of hooves on frozen cobblestones, the slow chime of church bells muffled by fog. Somewhere, a writer scratches words into a notebook, fingers shaking from cold. The letter continues. The poets stay indoors. We gather by the fire at the villa, though the fire smokes more than it warms. Byron, always restless, says we might as well invent monsters if the sun will not return. So we do. One writes of a creature born from lightning, another of shadows that move without bodies. We scare each other for warmth. You pause, the words glowing faintly in the candlelight. It feels strange to imagine others finding comfort in stories while you count potatoes and kindling. But a tiny spark of curiosity stirs inside you. Monsters born from lightning. Perhaps you think, it takes darkness to teach people how to create light. Later that day you take the letter to Marta. She reads slowly, lips moving. People writing stories, she murmurs. While we boil turnips. She shakes her head, but there's a small smile hiding at the corner of her mouth. Good. Let someone remember this year, even if it's in a story about ghosts. That evening, the two of you sit by the faint fire, taking turns reading the rest aloud. The letter speaks of strange weather, of hail the size of stones, of travellers stranded by floods. One line makes you stop. Yet at dusk, when the clouds break, the world is beautiful beyond reason, sunlight spilling through smoke like gold through dirty glass. You close your eyes and try to imagine it. The room fades until all you see is that light, thin, trembling, but still gold. Days pass. The letter becomes a kind of talisman. You keep it folded in your coat pocket, smoothing it open when the cough comes or when the fire dies. It reminds you that the world extends beyond the valley, that somewhere else people are still thinking, writing, dreaming. You begin to notice other letters pinned to doors, passed hand to hand, left on church steps. A man from Hamburg writes that the Elbe has flooded its banks in Vienna. Musicians play for empty halls because no one dares to gather. In Scotland, fishermen pull nets full of dead fish. The sea itself, they say, has forgotten how to breathe. Rumours travel faster than horses. Some say a volcano exploded on the far side of the world. Others claim the moon is poisoned. The priest insists it's God's test. The doctor says it's nature correcting itself. You don't believe any of them completely, but you start to understand something. Explanation doesn't matter. What matters is endurance. One morning you decide to write back. Not to Geneva specifically, just to the world. You tear a sheet from the back of an old ledger and sharpen a stub of pencil with your knife. The graphite scratches the paper softly, like mice in the walls. "It is cold here too," you write. "Our fires will not burn, but we keep them anyway. We trade what little we have. A woman gave me half her wood yesterday, and I shared bread with her child. The air hurts to breathe, but we still breathe. The world feels smaller, yet the heart inside it still beats." You pause. The candle flickers. Outside, the rain begins again. You add one more line. "If the sun returns to you first, tell it we are waiting." You fold the letter, press it flat with your palm, and give it to the postman the next time he comes. He smiles as if you sip given him a coin. "I sit will carry it," he says, "even if no one knows where it belongs." That night, you dream of the letter travelling through the grey world, crossing rivers, climbing hills, slipping through hands stained with ink and ash. You see it pinned to a door in a candlelit room beside the lake. Someone reads it aloud, their voice trembling not with fear but with something gentler. Maybe the poet named Mary, maybe the restless Byron, maybe no one at all, just the air itself. When you wake, the dream feels real enough that you check your coat pocket to make sure the letter is gone. It is. The space it leaves behind feels warm. In the days that follow, a strange calm settles over the village. The hunger remains. The cough too, but the panic has dulled. People greet each other with small nods, tiny smiles that say we're still here. The doctor no longer knocks. He just enters, part of the family now. The priest spends more time walking the lanes than preaching. Sometimes he hums. One evening, as you walk toward the ridge, you find Marta and her boy sitting near a pile of stones. She waves. "Building something," she says. "Not sure what yet. Maybe a wall, maybe a garden border, maybe just a reason to stay outside." The boy stacks another stone, tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. You kneel and add one yourself. Together you build until your fingers ache. When you stand, it looks like nothing and everything at once, a shape of survival. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of wood smoke mixed with something else, wet earth, thawing. You tilt your head and realize what it is. The faintest hint of spring. You laugh, a sound you barely recognize. Marta laughs too. That night you light a candle and open a fresh page of the calendar. The paper is spotted with grease, but there's space enough. You write "wind from the south," smells of soil. It feels like a confession. Then you add, "A letter reached me from Geneva. They write stories by firelight. Perhaps I will too." You sit for a long while, pen in hand, watching the flame. Its reflection dances in the window pane, doubled, as if even light wants company. Outside, frost still grips the roofs, but the stars burn through it, bright and indifferent. You think of the poets across the lake, of their imagined monsters born from thunder. You think of your own small monsters, hunger, cold, fear, and realize they are quieter now, tamed by exhaustion and stubbornness. You whisper to the darkness, "We will write too." And though no one answers, the room feels less empty for having said it. By dawn, a single beam of sunlight slides under the door. It's pale, weak, but real. You watch it move across the floorboards, touching the edge of your blanket, the leg of the chair, the ink stain on your table. The colour it brings isn't gold, but something softer, like old honey. For the first time in months, the light doesn't hurt your eyes. You step outside barefoot, the ground rough beneath your soles, and breathe. The air still carries smoke, but underneath it, the undeniable scent of thawing earth. Somewhere far off, a crow calls, its voice echoing against the hills. You answer it with a whisper, not quite words. Maybe it carries. Maybe, like the letter, it will find someone who needs to hear it. You turn your face to the sky, still grey but no longer cruel, and let the faint warmth touch your skin. The road leaves the village like a sentence cut short. It winds between frozen fields, past hedgerows stripped of life, and then disappears into the mist. You follow it one morning because there is nothing left to trade and because motion itself has begun to feel like survival. Each step crunches through frost, every breath a small cloud that lingers as if reluctant to fade. The world smells of smoke and old straw. The first travellers appear before noon. From a distance they look like shadows moving through fog, a slow caravan of figures bundled in whatever they could carry. A man pushes a cart whose wheels groan in the mud. A woman walks beside him, a child tied to her back with a sheet. Their faces are grey with ash and exhaustion. You nod as you pass, though no one speaks. Words feel wasteful now. Not far ahead, the road widens where two old oak trees stand like sentinels. Beneath them, a group has gathered around a small fire built from fence boards and pieces of a broken door. The flames stutter, feeding on damp wood. You catch the smell of something cooking, grain maybe, or roots. It's faint, almost imaginary, but it pulls you closer. "Share?" someone asks. The voice belongs to an old woman, her eyes bright behind a film of tears. You offer the end of your loaf, and she gestures for you to sit. The others shift to make space. For a few minutes, silence is replaced by the soft sounds of chewing, sighing, breathing. The soup tastes of water and hope. A man across the fire tells you he came from Würzburg, that he's been walking since Easter. The river froze, then flooded, he says. The crops drowned in both seasons. Another adds that in France the grain stores are guarded by soldiers, and in Ireland the cattle have died of blight. No one questions anyone else. The stories are too similar to doubt. You listen and think of the letter from Geneva, of poets inventing monsters by candlelight. Here the monsters are simpler: hunger, frost, silence. Later you help them lift the cart from a patch of ice. The wheel snaps, but the man only shrugs. "We'll drag it," he says. They lash a rope around the axle, each person taking a turn to pull. The sound of effort, the scrape of wood, the grunt of breath fills the air. You walk beside them for a while, each step measured, deliberate. The road grows rougher as it rises into hills. In the distance you can see another column of travellers, no more than silhouettes against the grey. Someone begins to sing, not a song of joy, but a slow chant to keep rhythm. The melody spreads, thin but steady, like smoke drifting from one hearth to another. You find yourself humming too. Records will later call these months the Hunger Roads. Thousands moving from one ruined place to the next, chasing rumours of bread that never materialise. But you don't know the word refugee yet. You only know the feeling of walking until the landscape repeats itself, until even despair begins to seem familiar. At dusk the caravan stops near a ruined barn. The roof is half gone, but the walls still stand. Inside, straw has turned to dust. The travellers settle in, unrolling rags, placing small bundles beneath their heads. Someone produces a tin flute, dented but playable. The sound that rises is thin and trembling, yet it carries. The child on the woman's back begins to sway, half asleep. You close your eyes, listening. Sometime after midnight, you wake to whispering. Through the cracks in the wall you see movement, a shape slipping between wagons. Then another, thieves maybe, or simply the desperate. You hold your breath, the sound of rummaging, the clink of metal, a muffled curse. Then footsteps retreating into the dark. When morning comes, 2 sacks are missing. No one is angry. There is nothing left to steal that isn't someone's life. You share what little remains: boiled nettles, a scrap of bark bread. The man from Würzburg passes you a wooden cup of water. It smells faintly of smoke. You drink, and it tastes like everything else. Distant fire, cold earth, survival. The group disperses by noon. Some head east, others south. You walk west toward rumours of markets reopening near the river. The path narrows, turning to mud, where snowmelt trickles, dead leaves cling to your boots. Around midday, you hear a bell, deep, steady. It's not the church bell from home. This one is older, heavier. You follow the sound until you find a monastery perched on a ridge. The gate stands open. Inside, the courtyard is full of people waiting for food. Bowls clatter against stone. A monk ladles thin soup into each. The smell makes your knees weak. When it sips your turn, he fills your bowl and meets your eyes. "God bless you," he says. His voice is hoarse from speaking the same blessing 1,000 times. You nod and murmur, and you. The soup is hot, almost painfully so. You sip slowly, letting it scald your tongue. Around you, no one talks. Only spoons scraping bowls, the soft sound of gratitude that doesn't need language. You spend the night in the monastery's barn. The straw is damp, but it's shelter. Someone snores nearby. Another whispers a prayer. In the corner, a candle flickers beside a small wooden cross. You watch the flame, thinking of your own fire back home, the one that refused to burn, then finally learned to. You wonder if the house still stands. Before sleep takes you, a voice speaks from the dark. You came from the north. It Seps the monk, sitting by the door. "Yes," you answer. "Is it better southward?" He shakes his head. "The same, only more people." He pauses, then adds, "But the worst winters always break before they kill everyone." He gives a small smile, as if trying to convince himself. "The earth forgets hunger faster than men do." You nod. His words sound like prophecy, or maybe just exhaustion. The next day, you leave before dawn. The air bites but carries a new smell, mud, thaw, a faint rot of melting snow. You walk until the road opens into a valley. There, the river has begun to move again, cracking through its shell of ice. The water glints dull silver beneath a pale sun. You crouch and touch it. It's still cold enough to numb your fingers, but it moves. That alone feels like a miracle. You wash your hands, rub them dry on your coat, and feel something loosen inside your chest. Along the bank, more travellers rest. One woman hums while mending a torn blanket. A man stirs a pot over a tiny fire, coaxing it with careful breath. The child from before chases a stick, laughing for the first time in days. You sit and watch, too tired to speak. The smell of cooking, faint but real, mixes with the scent of river mud. The combination is almost pleasant. Someone begins to tell a story. Not of famine or loss, but of a summer long ago when the river was full of boats and music. The words float on the air, soft and steady. You close your eyes and listen. The story becomes a bridge between then and now, between hunger and hope. When you open your eyes again, the sun has slipped lower, staining the water with orange light. You stand and begin walking once more, though you don't know where the road will lead. Each step feels lighter, as if the earth itself is exhaling. Behind you, smoke rises from the traveller's fire. Ahead, the horizon glows faintly. You imagine that somewhere beyond it, fields are thawing, seeds waiting. You picture the people you've met. The man with the cart, the woman with the soup, the monk with his tired smile, and you carry them with you like stones in a pocket, proof that even hunger can't erase kindness. As night falls, frost returns. You find shelter beneath a half-collapsed bridge, curl up with your coat pulled tight, and watch your breath drift upward into the dark. The stars are faint but visible, scattered like crumbs across a black tablecloth. For the first time in months you count them. You reach 10 before your eyes close. In the dream that follows, you walk the same road, but it's lined with trees in bloom. People sing. The air smells of bread and honey. You wake with tears on your face, and don't know if they're from joy or hunger. You rise, stretch, and whisper to the dawn. Keep walking. And the road, still waiting, answers in silence but not in despair. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive. It begins with a smell, not a sight. The air, which for months has carried only smoke and rot, suddenly holds a hint of something lighter. You wake to it before you understand. It smells faintly of earth, wet and alive, like a promise. You rise, push open the door, and for the first time in almost a year the air doesn't bite. It brushes your face, cool but forgiving. The sky, still grey, has softened at the edges, streaked with pale amber light. You step outside and stand for a long moment, doing nothing. No chores, no plans, just breathing. Each breath feels heavier going in, fuller coming out, as if the lungs have remembered their purpose. Around you, the frost clings in patches, but water trickles from the roof. Drops hit the ground one by one, counting down the end of winter. Across the lane, Marta is outside too. She's kneeling by her doorstep, hands sunk deep into the thawing mud. When she looks up, her eyes are bright. "Smell that?" she asks. You nod. "It's back," she says simply, and you know what she means. Life. The two of you walk to the edge of the fields. The soil glistens like oil, black and wet. Pools of water shimmer where once the crops stood. You kneel, pressing your hand into the earth. It's cold, but it moves. A pulse, faint but real. Then you see it, small enough to miss if you blink. A single blade of green, pushing through the crust of soil. You lean closer, certain it must be a trick of the light. But no, it's there, thin, trembling, stubborn, the first green shoot. For a moment the world holds its breath. Then you laugh, quietly, afraid to scare it away. Marta laughs too, a sound half joy, half disbelief. She reaches out as if to touch it, but stops herself. "Let it live," she whispers. By midday, others gather. The news spreads faster than any rumour. Something green in the fields. People come with baskets and walking sticks, with hunger in their eyes and hope in their voices. Children run ahead, searching the ground for more. Soon they find them. 2 shoots, then 10, then a patch near the riverbank where the frost has melted entirely. You kneel beside a boy you've never seen before. He points proudly at a cluster of tiny leaves. "Grass," he says, grinning as though he's named a miracle. "Real grass." You ruffle his hair, the gesture unfamiliar but right. A man from the next village says he's seen lambs being born again in the south. Another swears the ice has broken on the lakes. No one knows what to believe, but it doesn't matter. Belief itself is the harvest today. The doctor comes limping across the field, coat flapping in the wind. "Careful," he calls. It's early yet. Don't trample the seedlings. But he's smiling as he says it, his grey beard shining with melted frost. He crouches beside you, touches the soil, and lets out a low hum of approval. "It's real," he murmurs. "The frost has retreated 3 hands deep. That's enough for life to start again." Marta laughs aloud, startling a crow from a nearby fence post. "Then it sits true," she says. "The world sits remembered itself." The doctor looks up at the pale sun. "Perhaps the mountain's gift is wearing off," he says. "You remember his stories of ash drifting from the far side of the earth, how it dimmed the light and froze the harvest. Maybe finally the ash is falling away." That evening, the village lights fires, not for warmth, but for celebration. The smoke rises straight and clear, not strangled by fog. Children gather near the church, singing in hoarse, uncertain voices. Someone finds an old fiddle and plays a tune so slow it feels like prayer. You stand near Marta, sharing a crust of bread between you. It's hard, stale, but tonight it tastes like feast. The warmth of the fire paints everyone in gold. Faces that have been hollow for months glow again. Even the priest smiles. At one point, the doctor lifts his mug of weak ale. To the first green, he says, and to the last grey. The crowd cheers softly, careful not to disturb the night. The sound of laughter feels strange in your ears, like a forgotten language you're learning again. You notice small things. The smell of wood smoke on skin, the glint of melted ice on the eaves, the rhythm of breath that isn't laboured. The world, for the first time in a long time, feels survivable. In the following days, the changes come quickly. The river swells with meltwater, spilling over its banks, not in flood but in relief. Birds return, their cries cutting through the silence like bright threads. The ground turns slick beneath your boots, each step leaving a print that fills with water, then vanishes. Marta plants the first row of turnip seeds behind her cottage. Even if they die, she says, it's good to try. You do the same, kneeling beside your small patch of soil, pushing seeds into the damp earth with careful fingers. Each one feels like a word written in a forgotten language, one the soil might still understand. At night, you keep the window cracked open. The air that drifts in is no longer bitter. It carries the scent of wet earth and distant rain. The coughing has grown quieter. Even the doctor's rounds have slowed. People wave to each other again when passing on the road. Some stop to talk. You begin to write again in the calendar margins. March 4th, ground soft enough to dig. March 7th, a bird on the roof at dawn. March 10th, sunlight stayed the whole day. One morning, you find the postman waiting at your door, smiling through chapped lips. Letters from the south again, he says. He hands you a small bundle, bound with string. You recognize the handwriting immediately. It's from Geneva. The letter reads, "The sky is blue again. The poets have gone outside. Byron rides his horse along the lake and calls it a miracle. We are all sunburned like fools. The snow on the peaks is melting fast. We fear floods now instead of frost. The world changes its cruelties, but at least it changes." You fold the letter carefully and slip it into your coat pocket. Then you walk outside into the pale sunlight and lift your face to it. The warmth is timid, unsure of itself, but real. You close your eyes and let it rest there, feeling the skin of your cheeks thaw by degrees. That evening, Marta's boy brings a small bouquet of green shoots and places them on your table. "For luck," he says shyly. You place them in a jar with a little water. The stems bend toward the light of the fire, as if drawn by memory. You watch them for a long time, the way they lean, soft and determined. Before bed, you write one more note in the calendar. "We saw the first flowers near the stream." Then, beneath it, you add, "We are still here." You sleep deeply that night. No dreams of hunger, no cold pressing against the walls. Only the sound of rain, gentle, steady, kind. It drums against the roof, not as punishment but as renewal. In the darkness, you think of the blade of grass that began it all. You see it now not as a fragile thing, but as proof life doesn't return suddenly. It creeps back quietly without asking permission. At dawn, you wake to the sound of a blackbird singing. The note is clear, strong, defiant. You stand by the window, watching the fields glisten under a thin veil of mist. The world looks different, not perfect, not healed, but alive. You whisper to the morning air, "Thank you." It's not prayer, not even habit, just gratitude, spoken to whoever might be listening, the earth, the wind, or maybe yourself. And for the first time in a long time, the world answers, not in words, but in warmth. The morning comes without frost for the first time in a year. The window glass, once filmed with ice, now runs with clear water. You rise before dawn out of habit, expecting cold to meet you, but the air inside the room is soft. The candle on the table has melted slightly in the night, its edge slumping, proof that warmth has found its way in. You open the door. A mist hangs low over the fields, thick but gentle, tinted gold by a shy sun. The smell hits you first. Grass and damp wood, clean mud. The faint sweetness of thaw. Birds call from somewhere unseen, their songs broken and uncertain, as if they too are remembering how to begin. You walk barefoot into the yard. The ground, wet and cold, gives beneath your toes. It feels alive again. Each step releases the smell of soil. The frost scars on the fence posts glisten with dew, not ice. A bee, just one, drifts past your face, slow and sleepy. You turn to follow its path and smile without meaning to. Inside, the small fire you left smouldering has gone to ash. You don't bother relighting it. For the first time in months, the cold isn't an enemy. You stand by the hearth and listen to the quiet sound of wood creaking as it dries in the warmth. Across the lane, smoke curls from Marta's chimney. It's thin and white, the smoke of cooking, not desperation. You can almost smell the broth. You cross the yard and knock. The door opens before you finish. She stands there with a ladle in one hand, cheeks flushed from the fire. The boy is beside her, hair wild, a streak of flour on his nose. "We baked," he says proudly, lifting a small, uneven loaf. The smell makes your throat tighten. You laugh, a sound that surprises you both. Marta tears the loaf in half. The crust cracks with a soft sigh. She gives you a piece without ceremony. "Eat while it's hot," she says. You sit together at the table. The bread is dense, rough, but warm all the way through. Steam curls upward, carrying the scent of yeast and earth. You take a bite. It tastes like memory, the opposite of hunger. Later, the three of you walk to the riverbank. The water, once silent under ice, now chatters over stones. The boy throws sticks into the current and watches them spin away. The sun rises higher, pale but steady. Its light glints off the water, turning it to sheets of moving silver. The doctor passes on horseback, waving as he goes. His coat is unbuttoned, collar open. You see colour in his face again. Behind him, carts roll by carrying sacks of grain for planting. The fields that lay dead all winter will soon be turned again. The rhythm of the world is returning, slow, creaky, but certain. In the distance, a church bell rings. This time it doesn't sound like mourning. It's lighter, almost playful, as if the metal itself is relieved. The sound carries over the valley, weaving through the new green. You sit on the bank, letting the sunlight soak into your clothes. The warmth feels strange after so long. It prickles your skin, makes you drowsy. The boy lies back in the grass and closes his eyes. Marta hums softly, a tune you don't know but recognize anyway. The air hums too, alive with insects and faint laughter from the village. A cart rattles somewhere down the road. The smell of baking drifts on the wind. You realize how quiet your own heartbeat has become. No longer a drum of worry, but a steady rhythm, matching the land's. As the weeks pass, colour returns to everything. The sky turns blue, not the flat grey you learned to endure, but deep and endless. The fields spread green again, speckled with yellow wildflowers that bloom as if they've been waiting all year to shout. The walls of your cottage dry completely. The damp smell fades into wood and sunlight. You find yourself working in the garden again. The soil is soft beneath your nails. You dig and plant and sweat and feel no resentment for it. When the seeds sprout, you smile at each one like an old friend. One afternoon, you hear laughter from the lane. Children are playing with hoops again, running barefoot. The cough that haunted the village has thinned to memory. You see the doctor sitting outside the tavern, a mug in hand, head tilted to the sky. The priest passes by, hat in his hands, humming. Marta joins you, carrying a basket of herbs. The world healed itself, she says. You nod, though you know healing is never that simple. Still, the earth has forgiven, at least for now. She pulls a folded piece of paper from her apron and hands it to you. "Letter came today," she says. The handwriting is familiar, the flowing script from Geneva. You open it carefully. The sun has stayed for weeks. The lake shines like polished glass. The poets have gone quiet. They say their set's nothing left to fear, so no monsters to write. We set begun planting again. When the wheat grows, I set'll send a loaf in its memory. May your spring be bright. You smile. Marta reads over your shoulder and laughs softly. "Tell them we already baked one," she says. That evening, you sit by your open window. The sunset spills across the hills in ribbons of orange and rose. Swallows swoop low, catching insects above the river. You can hear music from the square. A fiddle, a drum, voices joined in a rough chorus. You don't go down to join them. It's enough to listen. The laughter blends with the rustle of leaves, the hiss of the river, the low murmur of wind. The whole world sounds alive again. You look at the fireless hearth. The ashes have cooled, but you can still see the faint outline where the last ember died. You trace it with your finger. The warmth may be gone, but something remains, a memory that hums beneath the skin. You think of the first day of frost, of the hunger, the grey rain, the coughing rooms. You think of how people shared, how they lifted carts, boiled nettles, kept each other alive. The warmth you feel now isn't from the sun alone. It's from that, the invisible fire that never went out even when the world seemed frozen. When night falls, the stars return in numbers you've forgotten possible. The sky feels closer now, not heavy but vast. The moon glows like a promise, reflected in the slow, calm river. The air is cool but gentle, the kind of chill that invites blankets, not fear. You lie in bed with the window open. The curtains sway in the breeze. Somewhere outside a night bird sings, its call soft and steady. You let your breathing match its rhythm. For a long time, you stay awake just to feel the air move over your skin. Each breath carries a story of the mountain that darkened the sky, of the people who endured, of the small flame that refused to die. You realize finally that warmth is not a season. It's a memory the body keeps, waiting for the right time to bloom again. You turn on your side, eyes closing, and whisper to the dark, "We made it." The words fall into the quiet like seeds, small and sure. The next morning you rise with the sun. The world outside glows green and gold. Marta waves from across the lane, flower on her hands, a fresh loaf cooling on her windowsill. The boy runs through the grass, chasing a butterfly. You smile, step outside, and lift your face to the sky. The warmth, once lost, is everywhere. And this time you know it will never leave. You're safe now. The frost is gone, the rivers run free, and the air no longer carries ash. The long grey year has drifted into memory, softer now, dulled by time. You lie still, wrapped in quiet, and listen to the slow rhythm of your breath, in and out, the simplest act, once so fragile, now steady as the turning earth. Beyond the window the fields whisper, the young grass moves like water beneath the moon. Somewhere a night bird calls, and its echo carries through the dark smooth as silk. The world that once shivered under ice now exhales warmth, each sound a reminder. It survived. So did you. Your hands rest where the cold once bit. They are warm now, loose and open. The heartbeat beneath them is calm, patient. You think of the fires that would not burn, of the coughing rooms, of the thin green shoot that dared to rise through frozen soil. All of it is behind you, each hardship folded away like an old letter no longer needed. The house creaks softly, wood expanding with warmth. The scent of earth lingers on the air, rich and alive. Your eyelids grow heavy. The present dissolves into the slow blur of rest. You picture a field in early summer, tall grass, a slow river, sunlight thick as honey, the sound of laughter far away. The warmth on your skin deepens until it feels like light itself, seeping through every thought, every memory, every last edge of fear. Breathe in, breathe out. The grey world fades completely now, leaving only softness, warmth, and the hush of peace. You're home again, and the warmth will never leave. Sweet dreams.